I want you to imagine, just for a second, waking up tomorrow morning in a completely different world.
Oh, man.
Right. You open your eyes, you look around, and you discover that you are the child of a wealthy, noble family.
I mean, that is the ultimate classic fantasy dream right there.
It totally is. You've got the title, you've got the huge estate, the legacy, but then it's the morning after this lavish family wedding, and all the guests pack up and leave.
And the reality of your new life suddenly sets in.
Yeah. The fancy decor gets taken down, and it reveals, like, peeling, rotting wallpaper.
Oh, wow.
Your breakfast isn't this sprawling feast anymore. It's just stale bread and watery soup. You realize your family is, well, they are so incredibly broke that they actually have to hide their crushing poverty behind literal curtains.
The contrast there is just, it's completely jarring. You expect a fairy tale, and instead you get this crash course in extreme rural poverty.
Exactly.
And, you know, a very strict, unforgiving social hierarchy. There is definitely no magical trust fund waiting for you.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are exploring the really fascinating story of Will.
Right, who was originally a Japanese adult named Shingo.
Yes, Shingo. He suddenly reincarnates into exactly this scenario. He wakes up as a 5-year-old boy, the 8th son of this destitute noble family in the rural Balmanite countryside.
Which is already a tough break.
Right. And to complicate things even further, Will soon discovers he possesses this legendary world-altering magical power.
A power that really sets off just a massive chain of events. I mean, we were talking about dragons, ancient mechanical ruins.
Giant golems.
Yeah, intense political manipulation, and eventually a deeply tragic family conflict.
But, you know, our mission today isn't just to recap a magical fantasy adventure. We're using Will's story to explore the hidden burdens of exceptional talent.
That's a great way to put it.
We're going to unpack how absolute power doesn't actually solve your problems. It just, well, it changes the rules of the game you have to play.
Yep.
And that is a reality that applies whether you're fighting mythical monsters or just, like, trying to navigate cutthroat office politics.
It really is a brilliant study in how human systems react to anomalies. And Will is the ultimate anomaly.
Right.
When you introduce immense power into a fragile ecosystem, that ecosystem doesn't just adapt peacefully.
No, it violently tries to contain the threat.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Will finds out he's the 8th son. And in this feudal society, the hierarchy is just absolute.
It is everything.
Being the 8th son means he inherits absolutely nothing. He's expected to just leave when he comes of age and, you know, figure it out on his own.
Good luck, basically.
Right. But then he finds this magical test orb in the family library. He touches it, and it glows blindingly white.
Let's look at the mechanics of that orb for a second, because it's important.
Sure.
In this universe, magic is powered by mana, which is an internal energy reserve that varies wildly from person to person.
Right, like a battery.
Exactly. So a dim glow means you might be able to, like, light a candle, but a blinding white light, that means Will has a mana capacity that rivals legends. He has an absolute ocean of energy inside him.
Which naturally leads him to secretly meet this legendary magician named Alfred.
Right.
And Alfred is actually what they call a whisperer of the dead.
Right.
He's basically a zombie, but not the mindless kind. He is a spirit anchored to the physical world by this singular, unfulfilled, dying wish, which is to pass on his magic to a worthy successor.
It's a beautiful but incredibly dark mentorship, really. Alfred teaches Will how to harness that ocean of mana.
Yeah.
But his primary lesson isn't just about, you know, how to cast a fireball. His biggest, most urgent warning is that Will must keep this power a total secret.
Because of his brother.
Exactly. If Will's eldest brother, Kurt, who is the designated heir to the family, if Kurt finds out Will has this kind of power, Kurt will instantly view him as a threat to his succession.
It would just completely tear the family apart.
Right, so Will has to hide it.
It sets up this really heartbreaking dynamic, because Will's training actually ends when he has to use his newly learned holy magic to purify Alfred.
Yeah, that part is brutal.
He has to tearfully send his own teacher to the afterlife before Alfred's soul degrades, and he turns into a mindless monster.
It's so sad.
And just to clarify how that works for you listening, holy magic isn't about destroying something physically. It directly interacts with spiritual anchors, severing that unnatural attachment a soul has to the physical world.
Right, so Will basically has to forcefully cut the cord, keeping his mentor here.
Exactly.
The emotional toll of that is just staggering for a child. I mean, he gains incredible power, but the immediate cost is losing the only person who actually understands him.
Yeah. And go back to Alfred's warning about keeping the power hidden. It really makes me think of this analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's like someone secretly holding a winning lottery ticket worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Well, that's good.
But they know that if their deeply dysfunctional family finds out about it, the resulting greed and paranoia and infighting will just destroy them all.
Yeah, they'd tear each other apart for a piece of it.
Exactly. Why is it that human systems often treat extraordinary potential as a threat to be managed rather than like an asset to be celebrated?
Well, that is the core tragedy of Will's early life. In a rigid, insecure system like an impoverished noble family desperately clinging to its status, the hierarchy is the only thing keeping chaos at bay.
Right.
Kurt's entire identity, his fundamental self-worth, is built exclusively on being the heir.
Because he has nothing else.
Exactly. If Will, the supposedly useless son, suddenly reveals he has the power to level mountains and generate massive wealth, it completely invalidates Kurt's position.
It makes Kurt obsolete.
Human systems inherently crave stability, you know?
Yeah.
Extraordinary talent is unpredictable. It disrupts the status quo. So, rather than celebrating Will's gift as a way to lift the family out of poverty, the system views it as an existential threat. Will's power becomes this massive liability.
It is a bizarre paradox.
Yeah.
He has this godlike power, but he's a prisoner to it.
Literally.
He has to pretend to be weak just to keep the peace under his own roof. Which brings up a fascinating problem. When you are forced to hide your true self to survive your family, how do you ever form genuine relationships out in the real world?
It's incredibly difficult.
We see Will face this exact crisis when he finally comes of age, he leaves home, and he goes to the Adventure Academy. You'd think he'd finally be free, right?
You'd hope so.
But he struggles to make friends because his immense power absolutely intimidates everyone. He's just totally isolated.
Because people are looking at the blinding white light of his mana and not the boy casting it.
Exactly.
It's incredibly lonely at the top, especially when you didn't even ask to be there.
He does eventually form an alliance with 3 classmates, though. Erwin, who is a swordsman, Louise, a brawler, and Ina, a lancer.
Right, his core team.
And they don't bond over magic or combat strategies. They bond over shared trauma.
Yeah.
They're all overlooked younger siblings. Their families sideline them out of embarrassment because their physical talents outshone their older designated heir siblings.
It's the exact same dynamic Will dealt with.
Right. They completely understand Will's alienation of being the spare child.
So they form this little tribe of outcasts, and that bond is really cemented when Will's power is finally forced into the open.
The airship scene.
Yes. They are traveling on an airship when this massive undead bone dragon attacks them. Will has to use flight magic to get airborne, and then he unleashes holy magic to completely obliterate the spiritual energy holding the dragon's bones together.
It's a crazy scene.
It really is. And in the aftermath, he claims a super rare dragon gem.
Which instantly catapults him from an obscure student to a literal national celebrity.
Overnight.
The king rewards Will with the title of Baron. So suddenly this introverted kid is thrown into terrifying political meetings with massive figures like Duke Amadeus and the royal mage Bran.
People who eat kids like Will for breakfast.
Exactly. And Will, desperately trying to avoid dealing with these scary political elites alone, casually declares Erwin, Louise, and Ina as his official team.
Which is such a smart move, honestly.
It is. He pulls them into his new noble life and gives them a real protected place in the world.
He is using his newfound systemic power to shield the only people who understand his psychological wounds.
Yeah.
They aren't awed by his magic. They are loyal to the person who shares their exact family trauma.
I have to challenge this dynamic, though. Is it really possible to have an equal partnership when one person in the group is basically a walking cheat code?
What do you mean?
I mean, Will can single-handedly summon what they call S-rank rock barriers. For context, that means he is manipulating Earth at an architectural scale in a matter of seconds.
Right.
Stopping entire packs of monsters dead in their tracks. If you are Erwin and you're relying on just a sword, how do you maintain your self-worth in the shadow of a literal giant?
Well, that is the exact tension that nearly breaks Erwin later in the story.
Oh, the tournament.
Right. There is a grand tournament held in the capital, and it is strictly no magic allowed. Everyone expects Erwin to easily win his category.
Because he's a physical prodigy.
Exactly. But the king, playing his own games as usual, forces the previous champion, Pharaon, to compete as a massive roadblock for Erwin.
Yeah, that was completely unfair.
It was. So Erwin trains so hard his hands literally bleed. He pushes himself to the point of a severe shoulder injury.
And why does he do that?
Because Bran, the royal mage, essentially tells him that without magic, he is just a useless burden to Will.
Which is brutal. Erwin gets incredibly defensive, screaming at his teammates because they all have magic and he doesn't. You can just see his self-worth entirely collapsing.
It's hard to watch, but what pulls Erwin back from the brink isn't some miraculous physical breakthrough.
Right.
It's a lunchbox. Seriously, Will had fallen asleep from pure exhaustion because he stayed up cooking these elaborate meals for his friends.
Oh, I remember this.
Erwin looks at that lunchbox and realizes something fundamental. Will doesn't keep them around for their combat utility. Will keeps them around because they are his chosen family.
Right, it's not about the fighting.
So Erwin steps into the semifinals against Pharaon, injured and totally outmatched, not to prove his physical equality, but because retreating isn't an option when you belong to a team that values you that deeply.
Okay, but a lunchbox. Come on, you're telling me a sandwich cured his massive inferiority complex. We just established that Erwin is breaking his own body just to feel relevant next to a demigod.
No, not the sandwich itself, but what it represented, right?
Okay.
In a world that values Erwin purely for his sword and values Will purely for his magic, Will spending his precious energy to cook for them is an act of supreme vulnerability.
Ah, I see.
It proves to Erwin that their worth to Will isn't measured in monster kills. True equality in their group is psychological, it's not physical.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because Will's physical power might solve monster problems, but it drags him right into the swamp of high society.
Oh, definitely.
Transitioning from physical survival to political survival requires a whole different skill set.
Yeah.
The church steps in and essentially forces him into an engagement with Elise.
The saint.
Right, a saint with incredible healing magic. And they do this just to tie his rising star to their institution.
It is pure strategic matchmaking. Will is a newly minted baron with a dragon gem. He is walking political currency.
Yeah, and the church wants a monopoly on him.
Exactly.
But Will actually handles it beautifully.
Yeah.
He treats Elise like a totally normal girl, not a religious icon. He buys her this magic stone ring that projects an illusion of stars, and it's incredibly sweet.
It really is.
But the honeymoon phase doesn't last because the king orders Will to slay another ancient dragon, Greer.
Right, to clear land and solve a food shortage.
And this is where Will realizes he's what they call a paper noble.
The paper noble. It is a brilliant, if utterly cynical, political construct.
Okay, think about it like this. Have you ever been the superstar on a group project, doing 90% of the heavy lifting, taking all the stress, only for the manager to swoop in and take all the credit?
Oh, everyone has been there.
That is exactly what a paper noble is.
Mm-hmm.
Will takes all the physical risk, he slays the dragon, he gets a nice one-time bonus, and some public glory.
Yeah.
But the royal family keeps the actual land and long-term tax revenue. He gets zero equity and zero decision-making power.
Right.
So at what point does accumulating massive wealth and fame stop being a reward and start painting a massive target on your back?
Well, that target gets painted bright red right after their next mission.
Oh, the ruins.
Yeah. Will and his team are sent to investigate what they think are standard ancient ruins. It turns out to be a massive trap set by an ancient magical civilization.
It's a nightmare.
They're stuck underground for 5 brutal days, fighting endless waves of golems on roughly 2 hours of sleep.
And just to clarify, golems aren't like regular monsters. They are autonomous magical constructs running on programmed loops.
Basically robots.
Exactly. They don't get tired, they don't feel fear, and they do not stop. Fighting them for 5 days is absolute grinding attrition.
It is a mechanical nightmare. Will's immense mana pool is finally completely depleted. They face a massive golem dragon, and the only reason they survive is that Elise casts what she calls the miracle light spell.
Which is such a great character detail.
It is.
She kisses him to cast it, and later Will finds out this spell doesn't actually require a kiss at all.
Not even a little bit.
She just lied because she was fully convinced they were going to die in that dungeon, and she just wanted to kiss him first.
It introduces a deeply human, vulnerable moment in the middle of this cold, mechanical slaughter.
Yeah.
But surviving those ruins is exactly what triggers the crisis you mentioned earlier. They don't just survive, They discover 7 ancient, highly advanced airships.
Which are worth a fortune.
Yes, the kingdom rewards them with 2 million gold coins each. And to avoid internal jealousy within the team, they pool all their money plus Elisa's assets entirely to Will.
That's a lot of money.
He walks out with over 10 million gold coins.
He is instantly one of the wealthiest people in the entire kingdom.
Mm.
So now he has 10 million gold. And this is where wealth stops being a reward and becomes a massive liability.
Absolutely.
He can blast a golem dragon to pieces, sure, but navigating the envious schemes of lesser nobles requires a completely different kind of armor.
And we see that vulnerability exploited immediately. This massive wealth and fame trigger a jealous assassination plot.
Rock.
Yeah, a noble in the capital named Rock. He starts spreading rumors that Will died in the ruins, hoping to swoop in and legally absorb his assets and title.
But while Rock is playing checkers, the king is playing 3D chess.
Oh, big time.
The king sends Will back to his rural home territory on a mission to purify 2,000 zombies from an old, failed military expedition.
It sounds like a straightforward magical task, right?
Right.
But it is a deeply layered political trap. The king has wanted to develop those southern lands for years, but Will's family, specifically his older brother Kurt, is completely incompetent and mismanaging the territory.
Let's look at the sociology of feudal aristocracies for a moment. You might ask, why doesn't the king just fire Kurt? He's the king, right?
Seems simple enough.
But in a feudal system, a monarch is only as powerful as the consensus of his lords. If the king arbitrarily strips a noble of their land just for being bad at their job, every other noble in the kingdom panics, fearing they might be next.
Right, it creates instability.
Exactly. So the king needs Kurt to dig his own grave by committing a massive, unforgivable crime.
The king weaponizes human psychology perfectly here. The secret plan is to send Will, the famous dragon-slaying billionaire, back to his impoverished brother.
It's so devious.
The king knows Will's mere presence will trigger Kurt's deepest insecurities, provoking Kurt into making that fatal mistake. Then their father will be forced to retire in disgrace, and the king can legally install Will as the new heir to develop the land without upsetting the other aristocrats.
It is a ruthless exploitation of Kurt's inferiority complex. The king is literally using Will as bait. And Will actually realizes he's being used as a pawn for his brother's execution. And he refuses to play along.
He tries so hard to fix it.
He does. He genuinely tries to negotiate with Kurt. He offers Kurt land, wealth, support. He says, look, we can both thrive.
But Kurt is just completely blinded by paranoia and pride. He thinks Will is just slowly trying to steal his authority.
Because in Kurt's mind, life has always been a zero-sum game.
Right.
If Will is succeeding, it mathematically means Kurt is losing. No amount of offered money or land can fix a shattered ego.
And it culminates in this absolute tragedy. Rock the noble, plotting against Will in the capital, sends his servant to trick Kurt.
This part is so intense.
The servant gives Kurt an ancient artifact called the Flute of Evil, telling him it will summon dragons to kill Will.
Right.
Kurt is so desperate, so cornered by his own paranoia that he actually blows the flute.
Let's pause on that mechanism for a second, because the flute doesn't just spawn a monster out of thin air.
No, it doesn't.
Ancient artifacts in this world operate on intent. The flute acts as a dark magical mirror. It requires the user's psychological state, in this case, Kurt's extreme paranoia and malice, as the fuel source.
It physically twists Kurt into a massive, grotesque, undead monster.
The irony is just devastating. The flute physically manifests the monster that Kurt had already become on the inside.
Yeah.
And Will is forced to use his holy magic to destroy it. He has to kill his own brother.
It's awful.
And in this crazy twist of fate, as the monster dies, Kurt's twisted, hateful spirit flies all the way across the kingdom, crashes through a window, and kills Rock.
The very man who orchestrated the plot to begin with.
It brings the entire narrative full circle in the most painful way possible.
It really does. Will's journey started with him hiding his power specifically to prevent a succession crisis and save his family.
And it ends with his immense world-shaking power being entirely useless to prevent his family's destruction. So what does this all mean? The story constantly refers to Will as a hero. He has the magical capacity to wipe out armies, but he couldn't save his own brother from his own mind.
It's the ultimate limitation.
I want to push you on this. Is this a failure of Will's empathy? Was it a failure of his communication? Or is it simply the tragic reality that you cannot save someone who has built their entire identity around being threatened by your very existence?
I would argue it is the tragic reality, and it beautifully highlights the limitation of absolute power.
How so?
Magic can build stone barriers and purify zombies, but it cannot cure human insecurity. Kurt was a victim of systemic political manipulation by the king, yes, but he was ultimately a victim of his own fragile ego.
That's true.
Will offered him every possible olive branch, but when someone's self-worth is entirely dependent on maintaining a rigid, superior position in a hierarchy, any attempt to help them as an equal feels like an attack.
Right, it's perceived as an insult.
Exactly. The real monster in this story wasn't a dragon or a golem. It was systemic political manipulation and deep-seated human envy.
In the aftermath, Will is officially granted the rank of count and given all those undeveloped southern lands.
The king gets what he wants.
Yeah, he does. Will is disgusted by the political game, but he accepts his role. And he demands the right to bestow noble titles, specifically so he can give them to Kurt's children.
Which is such a great move.
It is. It ensures they are protected and actually have a future outside of the cycle of poverty.
It shows a very mature acceptance of his reality, I think. He stops trying to run away from the system and starts actively managing it to protect his people.
He settles into this new life with his friends, his fiancée Elise, and his new bodyguard Wilma.
Oh, Wilma.
By the way, he literally hired Wilma by feeding her a massive platter of tuna sushi that he magically summoned.
Typical Will.
He even builds a whole factory just to mass-produce soy sauce. It is this weirdly domestic, happy ending for someone who's been through so much trauma.
He finds a balance, He uses his incredible power not just to destroy monsters, but to build a community and an economy on his own terms.
It leaves you with a lot to chew on. Throughout this entire story, Will just wanted to be a free adventurer.
That's all he wanted.
He wanted to escape the rigid systems of nobility entirely. But in the end, he becomes a count, he buys land, and he joins the very political machine he hated.
He becomes part of the system.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder about the true definition of freedom. Does true freedom mean running away from a broken system to live in the woods? Or does it mean acquiring enough power and influence to finally sit at the head of the table and rewrite the rules yourself?
That's a great question.
From hiding behind peeling wallpaper to running the entire territory. Something to think about the next time you feel trapped by the rules of your own world.